that meeting ordinance, or the order that I signed for electronic meetings. Do I need to read that again?
Yeah, we'll still have to read that tonight. So I'll pull it up here on the screen.
Oh, okay. I was going to say, since it's not in the packet, I didn't have a copy open at the moment, but if you've got it, that's great.
Yeah, I'll pull it up on the screen here right now, actually.
Okay. Hey, there's Jed. Now that Jed's here, we can all start.
Yes, can't wait. Although I don't think I'm going to have a lot to say tonight.
Oh, dang. Did your dog have puppies?
She only had one puppy, but she did have a puppy.
That's funny.
Yep.
We've had that happen before too. That's the worst, especially if you've paid a big stud fee.
Mm-hmm.
Oh,
yeah.
Well, I bet it's a cute puppy though.
Yep, he was. He sold for $6,500.
Oh
so.
Gosh, are you serious? They must not be new breeders. They must be pretty experienced breeders.
Yeah.
And they have demand around. It's crazy. It's crazy. Okay, I'll quit talking and we can start our meeting.
Yeah, sorry, we're live. We shouldn't be talking about this.
Are we live?
We are now live, yes.
Okay. Welcome to Alpine City Planning Commission for January 1st, 2020, the first meeting of the year. I'm Jane Greiner, and we have with us from Planning Commission, Ethan Allen and John McKay and Ed Bush and Troy Slade and Sylvia Christiansen. And then from the city, we have Jed Muhlstein, the city engineer, and Austin Roy, the city planner, and Marla Fox. And I can't ever remember Marla's official title. I'm sorry, Marla. And then we have a couple of guests with us who are going to be participating in the meeting, right?
Yes, they're here for the public comment portion.
For the public comment portion. Okay, great. All right, so we will go ahead and get started. Before we do any of our other activities, we want to mention that due to the seriousness of the current worldwide COVID-19 pandemic, we have signed another determination for the need for electronic meetings without an anchor location. So it means that none of us need to be at the city as a main anchor location, so that's completely remote. Do I need to read that entire statement, or is just showing it?
It's my understanding that you have to read it in its entirety.
All right, I'll just read the whole thing then. So, written determination regarding the need for electronic meetings without anchor locations. Due to the seriousness of the current worldwide COVID-19 pandemic, the rapid spread of the infection throughout Utah, and its potentially deadly and life-altering effects, I, Jane Greiner, as chair of the Planning Commission, have determined that conducting an electronic meeting with an anchor location presents a substantial risk to the health and safety of those who may be present at the anchor location. Accordingly, pursuant to the Utah Code Section 52-4-2074, electronic meetings will not be required to have an anchor location at this time. This written determination will expire 30 days from the date it is signed. And I signed that on December 31st, 2020. So with that statement, then we'll go ahead and open with a prayer. And has Alan joined us yet? I don't see.
I don't see.
Okay.
He's on here.
All right. Sylvia, would you mind giving an opening prayer to the meeting, and then I will lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I'd be glad to. Can you hear me okay?
Okay, thank you. And when we do the Pledge of Allegiance and the prayer, if everyone will mute themselves except the person talking, and then that way we can hear without the feedback. Thank you.
Our Heavenly Father, we're so grateful to be gathered together, even though we're not able to be together. We pray that this pandemic may end soon, that we may be able to resume business and resume being with our loved ones, and the kids can go back to school, and just everything that we have been dealing with. And we pray for people that have strength during this time. As we prepare for the city meeting tonight, we ask that our minds can be open and understanding comments and different ideas, and that we can resolve these issues civilly and with respect for one another. And we say these things humbly in Jesus' name, amen.
Okay, please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and repeat with me. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Okay, thank you. Okay, so the first item on all of our meetings is public comment. And so any person who would like to make a comment on an item that is not on the agenda is welcome to make their comments at this time. So it looks like we have a couple people here. And so why don't we start with Ryan or whoever is the spokesperson there. And you can go ahead and.
Perfect. Great. Well, yeah, thank you for allowing us to present today and taking a few minutes. We'll try and be brief, but so my name is Ryan Bingham, and then this is my wife, Dawn. And then we've got the Cushings over here, Emily and Travis. And then also the Strongs are joining us from their home, Chris and Becky.
Okay.
But really for today, for joining you and bringing something to your attention is that here recently we were.
Excuse me, before you get to it, could you state your address so that we could get that on the record?
Oh, sure.
Right.
So our address is 680 West Willow Way. And then, I don't know if you need there.
648 West Willow Way.
And we're at 185 South Hawthorne Court.
Thank you for reminding us of that, Jed. Okay, go ahead.
Great, thank you. And so we were recently advised, we're all newer to the area and we've loved living here in Alpine. But recently we were advised that some sheds that we had constructed were in violation of a specific city ordinance. It looks like or city code, it looks like it's 3.03.050. And it's specific, at least in our case, it appears number 6 of one of the parameters. And our intent today is really to provide some research that we have done in hopes of hopefully either changing the ordinance or seeking a possible exception. In 2 of the 3 cases, we've finished construction on the sheds, and then the Cushings are about 90% of the way there before they were advised of the ordinance, and that none of us were available or apprised to. And in preparation for this and the discussion today, there were a couple points we wanted to make, and then also have a few pictures that we'll try and share. And all of this would be happy to send over later on if it so pleases the council. And so a couple things, what we did is, as this was brought to our attention, we did our research, and in that we split up the city of Alpine into 3 different sections. And so each of our families took a separate section. And in probably just under a 2-hour time frame, you can see here we kind of split things up, and I recognize this is probably backwards to each of you. But what we did is we found in that process over 100 violations to the specific ordinance. And based on that, we did notice also that not only were there, situations that are, new construction, but there were also a number that were even older construction that were in violation of this code.
Would you, since I don't have the code pulled up in front of me, will you tell me what section 6 is? Is that the easement, or which one are you talking about?
Yeah, I was going to say, so it's under number 2. So the 3.03.050, it's number 2 for accessory buildings. And what you're citing is 2D. It's the side and rear setbacks specifically. So 2D, there's, you don't have to have the setbacks if all of the following conditions are met. There's 1 through 6. We meet all 1 through 5, but number 6 is the building will not be taller than 10 feet to the top of the roof line.
Okay.
So The
And
setback.
do all three of you have the same rule that you are in violation of?
Yes.
Yes,
Okay. So it's the height,
it's the height one.
being over 10 feet high. Okay.
Yep, yeah,
Okay.
thank you for pulling that up. So it's there
Okay.
that 6 under or section D. And so
Mhm.
each of us have that. We're all over, anywhere from a foot to 2 feet based on, each of our specific sheds.
Okay.
And so, obviously we would love to not have to change some of the design in our yards and some of the different things that would really prevent that. And, just a couple examples, for example, it's maybe a little bit difficult to see here, but this is
Raise it up just a little bit. There you go. Perfect.
so this is the Cushing shed, and it's hard to see because there's actually a
Home.
being built that's larger, that's
On the mountainside.
on the mountainside for their
Blend
yard.
right in.
It's blocking their view, and from our understanding, the ruling or the code was specific, likely to prevent people from blocking views, is from our understanding.
Mhm.
And then you can see, like in the case of our shed, there's not a whole lot behind it currently, but you can see we're a little bit close. There's no construction behind us, and then the Strongs have something similar.
Okay.
And so, really,
Sorry, I'm going to interrupt here. So in looking at, I called around to neighboring cities just to kind of see if we were really off base here.
Right.
So I looked at the codes, and then where I couldn't pull up the code online, I called neighboring cities. And AF actually has our exact wording in that screen that you just shared, that code, all the way down, number 2, A, B, C, D, and then, the 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, they just don't have number 6 at all, the 10 foot in height.
Okay.
So they have that exact same code bullets, except for the number 6.
They have no height restriction at all.
Right, for if you meet 1 through 5, right?
Yeah.
And then Highland City doesn't even have a setback restriction for this kind of a accessory building whatsoever. I have a page of neighboring cities where, so basically when I looked through the different neighboring cities, it looked to be pretty standard that what we've got going on with our sheds would fall into code, but it doesn't in Alpine, right? And we live in Alpine. But that's just kind of some research we did to see if we were way off with wanting to change.
Yeah, that's great. And anytime we look at changing code, we always compare many other cities and use that. And so it's always good to know.
And one of the other things, Emily actually spoke with Wright Shed, who constructed or at least 2 of our 3 sheds, and is one that I believe, from what I've understood, has probably done over 200 or 300 in just the last couple of years within Alpine. And their normal standard sheds are all over this height requirement.
Okay.
So it's kind of the norm for them, and not saying that necessarily what they do sets the precedence in each city, but where they're one of the predominant constructors of sheds in the area, we wanted to make sure and point that out, where 11 and 12 foot sheds are kind of the norm for them as well.
Okay. That's great to know. Anything else?
So those are kind of the main points. And so really our proposal today, and whether now is the best time or presenting later on in a specific city council meeting, is that we like to propose that we remove that portion about the height requirement, as long as it's the 200 square feet or less, which seems to be kind of the standard within most of the other cities. And so that would be our proposal today. To make sure that that we're able to do that, or once again, some type of an exception in our specific cases, if that was something that could be granted. So with that, I know we had a couple other thoughts, but anything, Chris, that you'd like to add, or Travis or Emily, that maybe I missed?
No.
Not for me, thank you.
Okay, great. Well, we appreciate you bringing that to our attention. And what will happen from here is we will discuss this with Austin, and we'll add it to a future planning commission meeting where we actually review that ordinance and look to see if some changes are to be made on it. I think any of the council members are welcome to comment too. I think no height restriction is always a concern, because we have some examples of people who will take things to an extreme and you'll end up with just some really strange, weird, tall building, you know, right on against your fence line. And so it's obviously, these ordinances are meant to protect property rights of the owner so that you can develop without, you know, imposing. But I mean, that does seem very logical to me, and we should take a look at it for sure. Any other planning commission members have any questions or comments that you guys want to make on that? Okay, so Austin, why don't we add this to a future meeting?
Sorry to interrupt. And one thing I failed to mention, I think each of us received a letter in the mail within the last couple of days with a deadline for February. It looks like 27th.
Okay.
To get into compliance. Otherwise, we'll start seeing, or there will be a fee assessed. And so
A daily.
a daily fee, I believe, of $50 per day. And so we'd obviously we'd like to avoid that. And so if there's anything that you'd like us to send over on our end, you know, in a more formal process of some of our data that we've gathered, we're happy to do that as well. Okay.
Austin, as far as you know, can we postpone fees until this ordinance is reviewed, or what? Do you know how far we are in the process of this, and what's the? We could do it in 2 weeks, which would still make it so that the February deadline is met.
Yeah, those are good questions. So typically how we deal with code violations and that kind of thing is if we can see that the violator is working with code enforcement to resolve the issue, or if they're working on a solution, we will waive that fee for as long as we can see that they're working on working out something with the city. So, I think
just you being
shows a good faith effort on your part.
Yeah, and I think you just coming to the meeting shows that. So I don't think you'll have any problem with fees being assessed. And we'll bring this up with, I can talk about this with Austin, and Austin, let's find out what we need to do the research necessary to put this on the next planning commission agenda to take a look at it. And maybe get some history as to why and when it was put into place and what kind of enforcement has been done. And, obviously give us a chance to do a little bit of research on this and find out. Sometimes there are other reasons for things that we don't just think of off the top of our head in meetings. And so I like to make sure that we've gotten a chance to be able to fully look into the history of it and the purpose and everything.
I know we've gone on long. Do you mind if I make one more comment?
No, go ahead.
Okay, so in looking at changing it, not just removing that number 6 point, say replace it with the building will not be larger than 200 square feet in area. When we looked at it, we kind of thought, well, yeah, if we say no height restriction, that's scary, right? But then we said if it's not bigger than 200 square feet, nobody wants to build an elevator shaft. So we
you never know. That's the point.
Okay.
You think nobody wants to build an elevator shaft till you get somebody who has the idea that they're going to build their kids a zip line or something like that. Like seriously, you have to put the precautions in there for the weird exceptions. So I'm with you. Who would want to? But
right. Okay. And the other thing we thought of to that point is just like Wrights had said, 11 and 12 feet, even raising it to 12 feet or 13 feet kind of covers that standard shed size, right? And we looked at chopping off our roof to come into compliance. It just looks really unappealing is what it comes down to. And we were thinking Alpine City isn't right, wanting to have us force us into things that are less beautiful on our property, right? That's not the point of this. The point of this is to protect neighbors' rights, right?
Well, right, exactly. And sometimes things change over the years. It could be that, 10 foot, there weren't sheds made that were ever more than 10 feet in a kit, And so sometimes things change. So, we definitely need to take a look at it. So.
Jane, I was going to make the comment, some of this might harken back to when smaller sheds were more kind of metallic rather than built, right? And I think rather than, I would want us to take a look at, rather than just getting rid of the height, is let's take a look at what some standard shed builders are building might and see if we need to make a modification to kind of accommodate that.
Yep. Exactly. And like I said, and have Austin kind of look back into the history of that ordinance and how long has it been in place and some other things, so.
How tall is your shed, Ryan?
So ours is what, just 12?
No, it's right around 11.
So ours is around 11. I know that Chris, yours is.
Yeah, ours is 12 feet, 6 inches, plus it has a little decorative cupola on top, which is probably another foot or
There we
two.
go.
So.
And ours,
So-
you can see here, ours is only 1 foot 8 inches above what it should be, but that house has been built behind it. So by ripping off the top of our roof, it's going to cost us quite a bit of money, and I don't understand what that's going to help.
You wouldn't gain it. In that particular situation, it doesn't really make a difference, does it?
Yeah, that's why we were.
No, that's good. Those are good examples, and appreciate you bringing this to our attention. And that's the purpose of this public comment. And so we're glad that you came in with.
Thank you.
And we'll take a look at
Yeah,
it.
thank you very much for taking the time and allowing us to participate. Austin, if you need us to send anything over, let us know. We're happy to do that to cut down on some of the research from our end.
Yeah, I mean, just really quick, if you want to just shoot me an email with your each and all of your contact information, like everybody's that's there, and then share with me some of the research that you've already done, and that we can kind of approach it that way. So.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hey, thanks. Appreciate you coming. And you're welcome to hang around and listen to our exciting meeting if you want to. Or
Thank
not.
you.
Okay, appreciate it.
You're welcome.
Thanks, everybody.
Okay, Austin, did we receive any other public comment through email that anybody would like to make?
Let's see. I just
did
checked
not
it before the
receive any.
meeting and I didn't see anything, but let me check it one more time real quick.
Okay.
Sylvia. Jane?
Yes, Sylvia. It's a little bit hard to hear you, but go ahead.
I wonder why. Hey, so my question is, are those letters and whatnot that they are receiving, are those computer generated? Because we need to make sure they don't get another letter.
They're not computer generated. So the code enforcement letters are written by Ted. So he writes them individually.
Okay.
Mhm. So we have a code enforcement person who, that's the biggest problem with code enforcement is having someone with the time and ability to enforce the codes or send out notices. And so sometimes they'll take a certain issue and send out notices on it and then pick another issue and send out notices on it. So, okay. Austin, you didn't see anything, right?
No, there's no comments.
Okay. All right, let's just get right into the public hearing for the ordinance 2021-1, the Planning Commission rules. And so if Austin, you'll introduce it, we'll have a public hearing, and then are we making motions on these as well? We're making recommendations to the city council, so.
Yeah.
Okay.
Every item on the agenda tonight is on there for you to make a recommendation. Of course, that doesn't mean you can't table if you feel like it needs some more work or
Okay.
there's more discussion that needs to happen on it.
All right, let's go.
Okay, so the first item that we have on our agenda here is the Planning Commission rules. And so at the beginning of our development code, there's a section that outlines kind of the process by which the Planning Commission operates, how it's organized, among other things. And so however, it doesn't mention anything about what is a quorum, how many people do you need to pass to have a passing vote, a majority vote. And so those are some things that our city attorney kind of picked up on. We have a new city attorney and he's drafted some new language here to kind of just add that in there to kind of clarify that and hopefully make things easier for the current planning commission and future planning commissions, just so, their responsibilities are clear and, what is a quorum and, how many people do we need to pass something? So,
Okay.
Yeah, that's pretty much what we're looking at here.
We've been following that, but apparently it's not been in the code. I think maybe just because of I don't know, because we even looked at the numbers a few years back. That's weird.
Yeah,
Okay.
I mean, it's part of kind of the, so the state has the Utah Public Meetings Act.
Yeah, I think that's where it's from.
And so that's where it comes from, but it's helpful to have it outlined in our own ordinance.
Okay. Okay, let's go ahead and open the public hearing on the changes, proposed changes to ordinance 2021-01 Planning Commission rules. If anyone has any comment on YouTube or has emailed in on this, we will listen to that now. And any emails, Austin, on any of these things tonight?
No emails.
Okay.
And
All right. Well, we'll give just a few more seconds on YouTube. Do we have attendees watching on YouTube today?
let's see, we have 2 people, which
Okay.
I don't know if
Well,
I'm
you're
one.
one of probably. And Sylvia brought up a good question. Let's go ahead and close the public hearing. So we'll go ahead and close the public hearing portion on this. Her question is, do we ever need a supermajority? I know in city council, occasionally certain things will require a supermajority. Are there any cases for planning commission that a supermajority is required that you know of?
No, and in fact, there's only one instance I can think of for the whole city where we require a supermajority, and that's for anything, any type of land use. So any type we change a piece of open
Land
space or
use
something,
change.
that requires the city council supermajority vote. Or I guess I should say also any executive decision, like if we had a legal case or something like that. But
Right.
those are the only instances. Other than that, a simple majority vote usually passes most things in the city.
Okay. Does anyone have any other questions? Any other discussion that you want to make or a motion?
Jane, this is Ed Bush. I motion to recommend that ordinance 2021-01 be approved as proposed.
Okay, we have a motion. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a motion by Ed Bush. We have a second by Troy Slade. Any commentary on the motion? Okay, let's see. I need to change my gallery view so I can call out. Let's do a roll call vote just to make it simple. Okay, so let's go ahead on those in favor. Ethan, go ahead. Let's just do a roll call vote. So just state your name and either aye or nay. So Ethan?
Ethan Allen, yay. Yay.
Ed?
Yay.
John?
John McKay, aye.
Troy?
Troy Slade, aye.
Sylvia?
Sylvia Christiansen, aye.
And Jane Greiner, aye. Okay, so that passes. Let's move on to the second one, which is ordinance 2021-02, site plan requirements. We'll get introduction and then a public hearing on this.
Okay, so this ties right back into our last meeting of the year that we had last year with the Alpine Fitness site plan review process. So as we went through that process, and it became increasingly clear that it's difficult to understand a 3D building through a 2D picture. And so we want to avoid that problem in the future. So the idea is that we would just make it a requirement for any new building that's going to be built in the business commercial zone, that they would have to provide a full color 3D rendering when they provide their site plan.
Great. Perfect. Okay, we have this before us and we're going to open the public hearing for the site plan requirements. So if there's any public comment on YouTube or via email, we will read that now. And according to Austin, there are no emails on any of them unless they have come in. So we will give it just a few more seconds for any comments on the YouTube station, channel, site. Okay, we'll close the public hearing. And do we have any questions or comments by members of the Planning Commission?
So Jane, my only concern is, what does it cost a business to produce?
It's a good question.
3D rendering?
I thought the same thing.
Is
And
it
often,
significant expense?
I don't think it's a significant expense now. Now, Austin, do you know, have you had any people complain of the cost of that?
I will say, so Paul Anderson, who was doing the Alpine Fitness building, he did mention that, so he had a unique situation where he was with one architect and then he switched to another architect.
Yeah,
The
exactly.
first architect did create a 3D rendering for him. And then when he switched to the second architect, they drew up a plan. They kind of tweaked the original plans from the other architect.
Mm-hmm.
And they never did a 3D rendering. They asked him, do you want one? It's going to cost X amount. And he felt like it was a lot of money for him. So I don't know what that dollar figure was, but that I think that was one of the reasons why he's like, I don't think it's necessary. I
think with the technology that we have today, I don't think it's excessive. And I do think, like in his situation, it's really, how could I say it? Not really of his own making, but I mean, it was his he went with one architect and they changed to another architect and did some things like that. And sure, that is going to add up. But everyone else that has brought one, I haven't heard any.
I mean, I would have a hard time imagining that most firms that design buildings don't just do
provide
that.
It.
Yeah, I mean, with the technology that we have nowadays and the ability to render things.
I mean, I can do a 3D rendering at home, just playing around on my computer, you know?
I have a home builder software program that runs on my PC that gives 3D renderings of a home. So I would imagine part of the cost was probably having to re-enter into the software everything that the previous architect had done to completely recreate it. That was the expense, rather than if it's in the software. I can't believe any architect is working with software that doesn't give them a 3D rendering.
Yeah. I think that is a valid question though, Ethan. And I do think though, that also if someone has a financial hardship, say it's a very small building, it's new or something like that. I mean, we can always consider exceptions to things if we need to, if there's a reason to, but I think for the most part, I don't think this is something.
And Jane, on that note too, when we were drafting this, we did consider things like if I'm just doing an addition on it, or it's a secondary building, or or we're remodeling, that seems very unreasonable to require someone like that to have to do a 3D rendering. So,
and that's why you've got new buildings only listed there.
Right.
Hey, Jed here. Can I say something too?
Yes, please.
So from an engineering standpoint, like I know what programs they use to design these buildings. There's one main one. It's called AutoCAD Revit.
Yeah.
It's very popular. It is naturally a 3D program, and that's what 95% of all buildings are designed in. So, I mean, the reason Paul's project was costing him more is because he was switching architects, and the architects were going to have to recreate what the first architect did. But most of the time, it is literally like the click of a few buttons to put out a 3D rendering. It's not a big deal.
Okay, thank you for confirming that for us. Good comments. Any other comments?
Are these animated 3D renderings or just the picture?
It does take a little bit more effort to make them animated to, I can't remember the exact word they use.
We're not requiring animation.
Okay.
Correct. Yeah.
Honestly, I think if you had a few, like 3 or 4 shots from different angles, it'd help dramatically.
Correct. And that is automatic, but it is more effort to make it animated.
Mm-hmm. Okay. Is that something that needs to be specified in here? I think 3D rendering is understood, don't you think? We don't need to add anything about specifying whether animation is.
I think if we wanted to make it a requirement that they were animated, I think we would add that language, but.
Yeah, but I don't think we need to unless other people do. The whole point is that we can see this we can see the roof lines and things like that, and see where the pillars poke out and, all those kind of things that we just couldn't see on a flat 2D. Any other comments, questions, or motion? Okay, if there's no more questions, we need a motion.
All
I
right.
make a motion that we recommend approval of ordinance 2021-2 as proposed by staff.
Okay, we have a motion by John. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, second by Troy. Let's go through roll call and those in favor, aye, starting with Ethan,
Ethan, I.
Ed,
Aye.
John,
John McKay, aye.
Troy,
Aye.
Sylvia.
Sampson, aye.
Was that an aye, Sylvia?
Yes, aye.
Aye, okay. And Jane Griner, aye. Okay, so that motion will pass, or that recommendation. Did you have that in your wording? Yeah, motion to recommend, okay. So the item C 2021-3, let's go ahead and have this appeal authority introduced to us.
Okay, so this ordinance is really just a housekeeping item. So we created an appeal of, we went to an administrative form of handling exceptions and appeals and those types of things a couple years ago. And so when we did that, we adopted a new ordinance for the appeal authority. And at the time, there were a few sections that were left out that should have been updated that did not. So we used to have a board of adjustments, and we found a few sections in our code where the board of adjustments is still mentioned, and that just needs to be swapped out for the appeal authority.
Okay, thank you for the introduction. So these are just leftovers where it says board of adjustments, and we just need to use the word appeal authority there. So let's go ahead and open the public hearing and see if anyone has any comment on that. And I'll be looking through that while we wait. Okay, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing. Do any of the Planning Commission members have comment or questions? Okay, we need a motion then. Who wants to give their hand up?
Jane, this is Ed Bush. I motion to recommend that ordinance 2021-03 be approved as proposed.
Can you modify that, Ed? It's 2020-03.
Oh, sorry, must be in the, okay.
There is a typo on the agenda. Yeah.
Oh, so they are 2021?
2021, yes, yeah.
Okay,
So
so the last three.
apologize. Those should all be 2021.
Okay, so Ed, you did it right. So we have a motion from Ed, and do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, second from John. And all in favor, aye, starting with Ethan.
Aye.
Okay, let me just quickly say, Marla, do you need us to state our name when we do this? Or can they just, if I state their name, can they say aye?
Yeah, as long as I know who it is. If I'm not sure who it is, I'll ask.
Okay, all right. So Ed?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Troy?
Aye.
Sylvia?
Aye.
And Jane Griner, aye. Okay, our next item is the public hearing for ordinance 2021-4 monument signs. Austin, do you want to introduce that?
Yeah, so this one's a little bit more complicated than the other ones that we've looked at so far. So this item has actually come to the Planning Commission before. We've discussed monument signs in the past. It went to the City Council. They had some discussion on it, and they had some thoughts on how is height measured, and also they felt that our setbacks needed to be tweaked a little bit. So we've redrafted this. We're coming back, and so I'll just go over what exactly this ordinance is changing. So first of all, it deals with the setbacks. And so these are monument signs are freestanding signs that would be located in front of a business or sometimes in front of a school. And so these signs are generally set back 3 feet from the sidewalk along Main Street. They'd be back 3 feet from the front property line, for the schools that are not on Main Street. But last year we had the Alta Bank, and they put in a new sign, and it was a source of a lot of complaints, to say the least. And so a lot of people felt like it was blocking the view as you came onto Main Street from, I think it's
Center?
Is it
I think
First
Center
South? I think it's First South.
Or First South. Yeah, First South.
And so, at that time, the thought was, maybe we need to relook and rethink our sign ordinance. Now, after that sign ordinance was adopted, we also looked at building setbacks, and we've actually reduced those. And so now the old setback for a building, for a commercial building, was 30 feet, and it's now been a change to just 15 feet. And so theoretically, the buildings are going to be closer to Main Street now. And so with that, the need for a large sign is mitigated. You really don't need a big sign if your building is going to be closer to the road, and you can advertise your building on the building itself rather than the monument sign.
Mm-hmm.
So these are a couple of reasons why, there's not a need to have them right up where they've been in the past. And so, so the first thing we're looking at is increasing the setback to 5 feet from 3 feet. That 2 feet doesn't sound like a lot, but it makes a big difference in visibility. Also, that would apply to all types of signs, so the 5 feet. And then we're also looking at changing the height. So the dimensions, I should say. So let me skip down here. So traditionally, you could have a sign that was 6 feet tall and 8 feet wide, which seems huge. Very large. That's huge. And I could see if you were doing like let's say kind of like where the current Alpine Fitness building is, and there's several businesses in there, and you got to have 8 different businesses, and they all need to be on the same sign. Then it makes maybe it makes sense to have a bigger sign in a situation like that. But if you're just a single business, there's really no need to have a sign that's 6 feet by 8 feet.
Especially if you're 15 feet from the road now.
Yeah, exactly. So, we just felt like that was way too big. And so we're proposing that you reduce that down to 4 feet in height and 6 feet width. Okay. So those are the dimensions and the setbacks.
And and let's look at this green comment right here. Yeah. Will you read that sentence that you were adding?
Yeah. So finally, the last part is when we took this to City Council, the council had some issues with height. How is height measured? Are we talking about the pedestal? Because a lot of these signs are on pedestals. So we've kind of drafted some language here, and it's for your review tonight. But basically, we're kind of hoping that this language can provide a framework from how height is measured for a sign, and also hopefully reduce any types of problems. So the language that we have here, this is what's in your packet, but we've actually updated it. So let me show you the updated version. I'm just going to switch. Okay, so this is what we have. Height. The height of a freestanding or monument sign is measured from the finished grade to the topmost portion of the sign, and any pedestal or base shall be included in the measurement. Landscaping or walls cannot be used to increase the height of the sign. So just to kind of explain this language here. So one of the concerns was, what if I put a big, huge berm on the front of my property, I put it in a kidney shaped, hill of grass. And then I put my sign on top of that, and the hill is 3 feet tall. And then I put a 4-foot sign on top of that. And all of a sudden I have a 7-foot sign. So the idea was we didn't want people artificially increasing the height of the sign by adapting the way that their landscaping is being done. There were talks about, maybe do we do it from the back of the sidewalk? It gets difficult to measure things though. So in general, every lot's going to have a bit of a slope to it because you want the drainage to drain away from the building. And so, a little bit of a grade is normal, but where they're going out of their way to kind of really build that up, it'll be obvious if there's a big hump in the front of the property. And so that's kind of what we're aiming at trying to reduce with that language there. And then the other part of this is we specify that, let's see, the sign is measured from the finished grade to the topmost portion of the sign. And then we also add this language that any pedestal or base, so sometimes you'll have like a concrete foundation or a brick pedestal or whatever. Those things are part of the sign, and they're going to be included in that height measurement.
Great.
So,
okay, let's go ahead and open the public hearing. And if you want to check to see if there's any comments on that.
yeah, it doesn't look like we have any.
Okay, we'll go ahead and close the public hearing on that. And now we can have some discussion, questions, comments. We have a couple of questions. One thing that I would like to make sure that we address is if we ever do offer anyone an exception, I mean, 15 feet, we shouldn't be offering exceptions. But if we ever did have any exceptions, I think that the sign, the monument sign should be not allowed if they're any closer to the street than 15 feet.
Oh, you're saying like for setback exceptions?
If we offered a setback exception, then I think that we should not, they should not have the option of a monument sign. And I don't know if that's just something that we should have you bring up when we have exceptions or something like that, but that's just a thought. And then my other question is, if you scroll down to where it talks about the signs, let's see, let me see right here. Keep going down a little bit. Oh, wait, that's the end of it. Where does it say that it says something about signs that are, oh, right, 7. Signs on cloth awnings shall be permitted to be reviewed. Okay, so that, is that meaning an awning on the building attached to a window awning, right?
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
So this is my question. When you go past the buildings like the Alpine Fitness Center is in right now, that town square area,
mm-hmm.
What about people have the metal posts in the ground and they attach vinyl signs to it, and it's in a kind of a V so you can see it coming and going? Do you know what I'm talking about?
Yeah, like the big banner signs, right?
Yes,
like,
yes. So what is our ordinance on that? Like why and how and what are our rules surrounding that?
Yeah, that's a good question. So those are considered what we call temporary. Our ordinance would refer to them as temporary signs.
Uh-huh.
And temporary signs have their own set of regulations apart from, so a permanent sign, like concrete, brick, is permanently installed in the ground. Those types of signs are going to have a totally different set of regulations than a temporary sign.
So that we don't get sidetracked, can you bring that up in our next meeting to review what the temporary sign ordinance is?
Sure. Yeah, we could add that as an item.
I would like to look at that. I would like to know what the regulations are around those vinyl signs, and also regarding examples like Paul's, where he has his trailer that has a huge sign on it and has not been moved from his yard for months. It's literally a billboard. And so, what can we have to avoid situations like that, where they're just parked a vehicle somewhere and essentially is a billboard. So anyway, I'd like to look at those temporary signs next week or next time. Then I won't just sidetrack us from what we're doing here. Any other comments on the monument signs?
Austin or Jed, could you give me kind of an idea of what size that Alta Bank sign is?
The Alta Bank is actually, I believe they went as big as they could with it. So it is 8 feet wide and 6 feet tall.
Okay. Is it I was just trying to think as a reference.
Yeah.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's probably about as big as that is as big. I shouldn't say that's as big as you'll see them, because if you go to just south, you go to Mountainville Academy, they have a sign that's like 9 feet by 15 feet. I mean, I don't know how that thing got built, but
yeah, how did that happen?
Doesn't meet our ordinance, but at all. So,
Well, maybe we should
anyways.
send them a compliance note as well.
Yeah. It did get approved somehow, and
yeah,
that sign's you know, it has a lot of other questions about it too, because it does have, it's bright. We don't allow bright signs. It also has color,
scrolling and color,
and we don't allow those either. So it's really perplexing to me how that sign ever got built. But
yeah,
different topic for another time, I think.
mm-hmm. Okay, any other questions, comments, or motions? Troy, you want to try your hand at a motion here?
Yeah, I
Like
will.
me
I
calling
just,
it out?
I was
you don't have
just,
to.
I just don't have the language in front of me, but.
Okay. It's
I can try and
right
pull it up on the screen here.
Right here you go.
Okay. I motion to recommend that ordinance 2021-04 be approved as proposed.
Okay, we have a motion by Troy. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, second by Sylvia. Do we have any questions or? Okay, then let's go ahead and vote on it. Sylvia?
Aye.
Ed?
Aye.
John?
Aye.
Troy?
Aye.
Ethan?
Aye.
And Jane, aye. Okay, so that motion passes, and we'll move to item E, which I can't wait to hear more about. Ordinance 2021-05 horse cow regulations.
Yeah. So that title, I think it brings a chuckle to a few things.
I know, love the title.
It's an odd name for a new ordinance. Anyways, so we've actually had some issues with horses in the last year, I would say, around town. So Alpine's is traditionally an agricultural community, and horses have been a part of Alpine's history from the get-go, and it's always been that way. We're actually one of the only towns where just about any lot in town can have a horse on your property, and that goes down to our smallest lots, which we have 10,000 square foot lots, and a horse is allowed on a 10,000 square foot lot in Alpine. So we've been pretty, we have a pretty lax horse regulations. However, when they did create the ordinance, they did put a restriction on no more than 5 horses or 5 cows on a single piece of property.
If it's in a development, or any piece of property.
Any piece of property can only have a maximum of 5 horses. So it doesn't matter if you have 20 acres, you can only have 5 horses. If you have an acre and a half, you can still have 5 horses.
Okay.
And so that, we have some properties around town where I will tell you that they have more than 5 horses. And some of those we've kind of considered them grandfathered in because they've had horses for forever. And then we have some others that have gotten an exception, kind of like our Bridle Up Hope. I don't know if you're familiar with that. But there are definitely more than 5 horses on that property. And so there's a few properties around town where this ordinance doesn't apply. And then over the last summer, we had some properties around town where people have 5 acres just sitting there, and they tell their friends, hey, why don't you bring your horses down from Idaho, come put them on the property, no problem. Well, unfortunately, our ordinance says no more than 5 horses, so it is a problem. And so when we go out there, it's kind of like, well, why does the guy that has an acre get to have 4 horses on his property, but the guy that has 5 acres can only have 5 horses? So that, didn't seem reasonable. And it just seems like if you have a large piece of land, you have the space for it, you're able to accommodate the animals, why can't you have more? And so
This
That's
seems
kind of what
almost
this-
like almost seems like an oversight based on the people who would have been here at the time this ordinance was put in place.
Yeah, I'm surprised why it was done that way. My thought goes to, maybe they took a draft from somewhere else. If you look at our animal ordinance, we do have a restriction on pigs, and pigs are more understandable because they're very smelly animals, and so that's more understandable why you would want to put a limit on how many you can have on a property. But horses and cows, I don't know. It just seems like if you have the space for it and you're able to accommodate.
Well, I know lots of people, like Will has a whole bunch of cows.
Right. And so, I mean, it's almost like we're already following a different rule than what our ordinance says. And so why don't we change our ordinance to be in compliance with what's actually in practice?
So you're saying to change it that one animal per 10,000 square foot?
Well, the idea is just to get rid of the maximum number. So
okay. So
that is, you can have one additional horse or cow for every additional 10,000 square feet of empty property that you have.
I have a question. What if someone has a whole bunch of property, but they keep their animals in a barn and fenced area that's on a small portion of their property?
Yeah. I mean, that is a good question. I mean, that's a great point. What if you had 20 horses and then you stick them all on one corner of your property right next to your neighbor, and your neighbor lives downwind from it,
Yeah, I grew up in Orem, next to a big apple orchard, and the farmer kept his cows right on the corner, and he had about 20 cows. And come springtime, you could smell those cows.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, I think there is if you scroll down a little bit, there is something on animal enclosures in terms of away from different peoples. But I'd like to, why don't we open this up for public comment? And so we can see.
Let's do that, and then we'll come back to this. So were there any other things that you needed to bring up, Austin?
No, I think, the other thing I wanted to bring up, maybe just as a discussion point, is, well, I guess Ed already mentioned it, is we have the animal enclosures. So, the idea is that the animal closures help limit some of those problems that you might have.
And I think there's some grandfathering that might be going on there too. So let's go ahead and open the public hearing. So we'll open the public hearing on the horse cow regulations, and we'll give that a few minutes to see if we have anyone with comments on it, or if any new emails have come in.
I do have an email for that. So I'll go ahead and start reading the one that just came in.
Okay.
So this is from John and Martha Williams. And they go on to say, we are John and Martha Williams at 257 North, 400 West. And we are in favor of removing the 5-horse maximum on lots larger than an acre. Here is and then he provides a copy of Highlands Code. And Highlands Code says, no large animal shall be kept on a lot less than 30,000 square feet in area. 3 large animals may be kept on a lot with a minimum area of 30,000 square feet, and 4 large animals may be kept on a lot with a minimum area of 40,000 square feet. 1 additional large animal may be kept on a lot for each 10,000 square feet of area of the lot in excess of 40,000 square feet. Thank you for looking at this issue.
Okay, so Highland requires 30,000 square feet as the beginning point.
Yeah, it appears that way. So 30,000 is their minimum, but then you can have 4 large animals if you have an acre, just shy of an acre, 40,000 square feet. And then for any additional animals over 4, if you have more than an acre, more than 40,000 square feet, you get an additional large animal for every 10,000 square feet.
Okay, great.
Appears no maximum on that. So.
Okay. Any comments on YouTube?
No, I don't see any comments on YouTube.
Okay, let's go ahead and close the public hearing and let's just open this up for discussion now.
Okay, so this is Ed. I mean, I'm not a horse owner. I'm a little worried that on 5 acres, 20 horses sounds like a lot of horses to have. But I'm a little more concerned about somebody on 5 acres being able to have 20 cows. Because that seems to be kind of in reference to Ethan. I've lived by areas that have had cows also, and you know, you know, if the wind's blowing right at the right time, boy, you know that. So you know, 20 cows is quite a large. To me,
So,
it seems like
yeah.
for a residential area, 20 cows is kind of a large herd to be having on one property here.
And we don't have many big farming areas within the city any longer. You know, if we looked at this, if we looked at a city map to see where this would apply to, might be kind of interesting. I also wonder at what point in time is the 10,000 square feet, that is 1/4 of an acre. And we're allowing a horse on 1/4 of an acre?
I had a neighbor with a horse in his backyard and on a small lot.
Yeah, I just,
he moved, so he doesn't do that anymore. But that
We actually have quite a few horse owners around City Hall area.
Are those
smaller lots?
Could those be grandfathered in, and when the property sells, that it would not be allowed? I don't personally. I wonder if we should look at this in more detail. If I were to do what I personally thought would be best for a community, I don't think I would have large animals allowed on a 10,000 acre lot.
And not only for the community, but for the animals.
Yeah.
Yes, exactly. That's not a proper place for a horse or a cow.
Yeah, I mean, I would just, you know, raise the fact that there are many like that, and it's always been that way. So,
right.
I mean, we have a lot of them that exist. If you were to go down that road, I'm sure they would be vocal about wanting to keep their horses.
Right. But what my point was is, I don't know how you guys feel about this, but you can change something like that, and it's they are still allowed their animal until the property sells. You know, that's one way you could handle that if you feel like the long-term goal is that that's not the best situation for a city.
So according to this ordinance, I just don't know that there's a big need. I live on a street with mostly 1 acre lots. About half of my neighbors have horses, and I don't think anybody has 5 horses. Not one person. So
no,
but odd that
you kind of have to set the ordinances though for the extreme, just like in that case of the shed. I mean, she says no one wants to build an elevator shaft until someone does. And nobody wants 5 horses on their acre lot until somebody does. You know what I mean?
Right. Well, and so to me, 5 is a ton. I don't know that I would want to increase.
It's too many.
Right. Yeah.
I say the farms and the horses were here before the people, and they knew the law when they came in. So
that's true.
I mean,
that's a good point,
when I speak with people, I get people talking to me all the time, and they're saying, "Hey, I'm thinking about moving to Alpine," and one of the big reasons why people move to Alpine is because they like the small town atmosphere. They like that animals are around. They like the open space, and so they like that feel. And
sure.
They're moving here for that. And some of them are moving here. They're buying a lot because they can have a horse on that property. Right. And in another city, if they had a 20,000 square foot lot, they couldn't have that horse on that property.
Right. Yeah. Well, I don't disagree with that, and I don't disagree with what Marla is saying, but I do think. Don't you think, Marla, like just a restriction on how many, like, you know, on a lot is a good idea?
Yeah, but then again, you're putting a number on there, like we had 5 and that wasn't working. So what number do you put?
Yeah, I know. Yeah, well, we're saying that we want to remove that, which is fine. is 10,000. I mean, I don't know that we have anywhere that somebody would have space to have that many cows or anything. I don't know. So look,
Bangerter's Field maybe has more than 5 horses on it.
Yeah.
And I can think of, I can think of 2 or 3 places maybe where there's a lot of horses, but there's just not very many.
Well, like, over by Fort Canyon, what about cows? Like over by Fort Canyon, I don't know, how many cows does Will have, Marla? I mean, I'm not saying it's bad or good. I'm just pointing these out as, people have cows and horses and things like
I
that.
know we have 3 horses there, and I
Right.
know there are, Will's got a horse and camels and lots of cows.
Yeah. And it's a
maybe
big
he's one that
area.
was grandfathered in. I don't know, but yes,
Yeah.
he's had them there for.
Yeah.
It's a big area
also
too.
have there's also the Mendenhall Ranch that's over on the far west end of town on Westfield Road.
Yeah.
And they have lots of horses over there.
Yeah.
Do we get complaints with people that people have too many cows and horses? I mean, is that something we get?
We have had a couple complaints where, basically the problem that Jane pointed out, where they put all of the horses on one little corner of the property and it's right next to their neighbor. And so
because it's as far away from their house.
We have had 1 or 2 complaints like that. Yes. So, I mean, that is a concern that, they bunch them all together. That could be a concern.
Personally, I would like to look at this a little bit more rather than just say, let's just change one number and have it fix the problem. But I don't know. How do you guys feel? Do you feel like this is something that's just like, okay, yeah, let's just go ahead and make this change? Or do you feel like this is something we should look at more in a little bit more detail?
So Jane, really quick, John Williams that previously commented, he says he's unable to comment on YouTube, but he just sent another email. So
okay, great. Go ahead. Even though we've closed it, we're happy to hear your comments. Thanks, John.
Okay, so he says here, I am unable to comment on YouTube, but I am watching. I agree that 40 horses on 10 acres would be too many, but Mendenhalls have many animals, but most are kept in stalls that are cleaned daily, as are mine. I have 7 right now and wouldn't have more than 8 at any given time on our 3 acres. I also agree that 10,000 square feet isn't big enough for a horse, but wouldn't want to cause them to not be able to have their animal. But maybe new homes would have to follow the ordinance. And let's see here. Then he goes on one more comment here. There was a complaint he says he's had a complaint against him for having 10 horses on 10 acres.
Okay. Well, I agree with his comments. I think those are good comments.
I'm concerned about removing the ability to have a horse on a 10,000 acre lot. How many properties do you think we have in the city that have a horse on a 10,000 property?
How many? I mean, I'm just taking a stab at that. I couldn't tell you for sure, but there's probably anywhere 10 to 20 properties.
Really? Wow.
On a 4th acre lot.
That's not in the
around kind of that our old downtown area. I mean, those lots have been there since the pioneer times, and they have a lot of them. You can't really see the horses, but they're hidden. They're on the back there, and there's even one that they have llamas. Yeah, I mean, you'd be surprised.
Yeah. And this is just regarding large animals, though. This is like cows and horses, right?
Yeah. Well, I mean, the ordinance that we're talking about tonight would just be cows and horses. So we're not talking about the other animal types.
We're not talking about the camels and the llamas and the other things.
I mean, if you have a responsible animal owner, it all works out great. It's just what's going to happen when we have an irresponsible animal owner?
Right. What is
the cows in one little pen next to somebody else.
Next to your neighbor.
Yeah.
Then you have to file a nuisance report. Is that what you have to do? Like what recourse does a neighbor have if, say, somebody has an acre lot and they have 4 cows and they're on an acre and they have, obviously they're going to have their house over it. So say they have, basically they're going to take 1/4 of an acre and put 4 cows on it.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I mean, they would be allowed to have 4 cows technically on an acre.
Right.
The neighbor, what is their recourse? They can file a complaint. We'll look at it. We'll go out there, excuse me, to see if they're meeting the ordinance. One of the big things we're going to look at is the animal enclosure. How close is the barn or the stable or wherever they're keeping the animals? How close is that to the neighbor's house? That has to be at least 75 feet away.
Is that a grandfather type thing? Because I know I've heard people who've had complaints about that before and didn't get anywhere because they said, well, we were here first and so we don't have to.
It is kind of a we were here first thing because so if I built my barn first and then you moved in and built your house next to my barn and you put it closer than 75 feet, well, that's on you for building your house too close.
Okay.
And it says that directly in the ordinance too, in the development code.
And I have a friend who lives in Linden on a 3rd acre, and his neighbors got 2 cows and put them in their backyard next to his backyard, and they don't love that. I can tell you they don't love that.
Yeah. Sylvia, what have you seen from a real estate point of view and property, I'm curious.
Well, one of the things that I find interesting is we're saying, I'm hearing a lot, people move here because of the ambiance of the farming and the animals and whatnot. But I don't think that's 100% true. I think people move to Alpine just because Alpine's a really neat place to live. And it's kind of a desired zip code, really. This is a hard one for me. I grew up where land was measured in sections. Literally, I grew up on a half a section of land and we had so much room. And so I have a really hard time with animals being on small plots of property. So I'm glad we're going to discuss this because I mean, if you think about it, we can have 4 1/2 animals per acre. So if someone has 10 acres, that's 45 animals. So we need to be really careful with this. I think we need to put a limit.
Yeah, I mean, I think we probably do need to think about this a little bit more. I mean, I would be amenable to, I can understand maybe 5, I mean, might be a little bit restrictive, especially as you get up to a little bit.
Sure.
But I still think that it would be good for us to cap it somewhere. And then could we put like a clause like we have on 4 that says exotic animals or animals not mentioned above may permit, we could put something that, densities, or numbers above these may be permitted after review and recommendation of the planning commission or city council, especially if you had a larger piece of property.
Yeah.
To show that, pins were away or, on whatever, you could then kind of make an exception to that.
Yeah.
To house more animals,
Yeah. How do you guys feel about discussing this further after doing a little bit of research?
I'm all for it.
Are you for that or would you rather do it tonight? Okay. So Austin, if it's okay with you, if we want to do that, one of you just needs to make a motion that we table this and bring it back with whatever it is we want to bring it back with. If we want to look at other cities or if we just want us to have time to, visit areas in town.
If one of you has the silver bullet and you know exactly what the ordinance should say.
Yeah. I mean, if you have that right now, but I don't think anybody
word
does.
it tonight. So whatever.
Yeah.
I'll move that we table this issue until we're able to get more information.
Okay, we have a motion from Sylvia. Do we have a second?
I'll second it.
Okay, we have a second from Ethan. Any questions on the motion? Okay, all those in favor, Ethan?
Ethan, aye.
Sylvia,
Aye.
John,
Aye.
Ed,
Aye.
Troy,
Aye.
Jane, aye. I would like to look at this a little more detailed. Austin, let's give Austin a little bit of direction though as to what we want to consider. So we're not just putting it off with no direction to it. Would you guys like to look at a few more cities and what their ordinances are? What else would we like to consider?
I would say Highland. It'd be nice to see Cedar Hills, Pleasant Grove, maybe Lehigh has a lot of open, and see what they're doing.
And maybe some of cities that started kind of like Alpine, but they've grown into where, it's rural, but it's not.
Draper would fit that bill, I think.
Yes, that's a great example. I was trying to think of what cities like that. So maybe something like Draper, where they've got a similar area where it used to be a lot of farming. I mean, do we have anyone who it's actually their business? Like, do we have any dairy farmers? I mean, there would be an exception, I would think, if this was actually someone's livelihood. I don't know how that would fit into this. We don't have anyone now, but.
Well, Mendenhalls were.
Yeah. Anyway, so
I would like to take all of that with a view towards creating a cap. A number of large animals.
Yeah.
And we have a resident of the city who has a number of horses on a large piece of land who feels like 8 would be the most he would ever keep. I raised horses and cows, and frankly, I just would never consider raising any number of either of those on anything less than an acre per animal. That's just me.
No, that's me too.
Well, and at what point does it become a nuisance because of smell and everything like that? And so, and it should change. Like, for the example, the area where Will has all the animals, which is, I love it. I mean, I love the animals around it. It's beautiful. If he were to develop all of those lots right there, does that change it? Or, you know what I mean? So right now there's like big open areas, and then you bring the houses in. I'm not saying it does or it doesn't. I'm just thinking to the future is what I'm saying, is if we looked at something that would apply to current situations and future situations, so that the actual area for the animals is sufficient. So, okay. Anything else? Austin, does that make sense of kind of what I think?
Yeah. Thank you for the comments, and John for, working towards a cap. And so I'll look at some neighboring communities and see what I can find, and we'll come back with what.
And maybe the rest of us could take a little bit of time to drive through town and actually look through like the older areas of town and some of the perimeters and just sort of, it's funny how until you're paying attention to a specific thing, you won't notice something. And then when I drive through Alpine, specifically looking for garages or specifically looking for lighting, then I'm like, oh, wow, I just notice it with new eyes. So I always think that's a good idea for us to do.
Sounds like we have to go on we have to go on a morning walk with Austin.
That's right. Yeah.
On a little morning,
he walks around the old downtown area.
Right.
See what kind of smells. Speaking, everyone's been telling what they grew up next to. It was about a mile away, but there was a mink farmer where I grew up. And let me tell you, talk about unfriendly smells. When I was getting close, when I was walking places, I would hold my breath when I got close and see if I could hold my breath the whole way past the mink farm.
We moved here today and there was one in my backyard.
Oh, really? Oh.
Yeah.
I've lived next to a mink farm as well. It's not something I would wish on anyone.
Bad, so bad.
Oh. My daughter went to the University of Northern Colorado in Greeley, Colorado. And and they used to just say it's the smell of money.
Oh, yeah. Oh, wow.
Great smell.
Okay, do we have anything for communication?
I do, Jane.
Yes.
I just want to make a couple of comments about the public comment. Because I don't know if everyone on the planning commission realizes about these building permits.
Yes.
All new home plans are sent back to Austin and Jed, and they put a great big fat red stamp on there that says all accessory buildings must have a building permit.
Yeah.
Now, let's just say hypothetically that none of these 3 families saw that great big red stamp.
Yeah.
None of them called the building permit department to say, do I need a permit for these buildings?
Yeah.
Next, all accessory buildings are required to meet a setback requirement, which is usually 15 feet off the rear and 10 on the side. As a courtesy, we've said, hey, people that just want a little lawnmower shed, we're going to provide you a way to have this closer to your fence line. It has to meet the 6 criteria. And when people call and ask me, I tell them the main reason why nobody can meet this is because of height. You have to keep that building under 10 feet tall, or you have to meet the 15 and 10. Those are your only 2 options. And so I just
I really
know what you're going to
appreciate
tell
that.
these guys.
Yeah, no, I really appreciate that. And I knew that there were things like that I didn't know off the top of my head. And that's why I was like, oh, well, you know, want to look into it. I think they have a valid point, but again, like you said, the reason is, and I remember this now, that the setbacks, so like if someone's building a garage, they can't do that without meeting those setbacks. So the intent of these kind of buildings that are right up against the fence line are small sheds for
your lawnmower and some little yard tools.
Right. However, I do think within, like, if almost every shed kit is 12 feet, I could see us maybe modifying that a little bit, but I totally understand and get what you're saying. So, and I appreciate that. And I think that's the biggest problem, is that people just don't call the city whenever they do anything. So, but they appeared to be new houses.
Yeah, it's a tricky situation because, I mean, ultimately they did not get a building permit for their building, and they probably should have, or at least come and done some due diligence.
I mean, how aware do you think people are that they need one, but they just don't want to have to go through the hassle, so they don't do it? Or do you think people actually don't think they need a building permit to put a shed in?
Hey, when I first moved here, I called the city and they said if it's under 200 square feet, you don't need a building permit. Is that right?
Unless, you don't need a building permit if it's under 200 square feet, unless you have electricity or plumbing in there. But you do have to put it in the right place.
You know, another interesting point that they brought up tonight is most of these were built by the same builder. So, you know, if he's doing something wrong on one, he's probably going to do it wrong on the other property as well.
The same builder built, and it's actually a fairly common builder too.
Yeah, it sounds like it. It sounds like he's done lots of work around Alpine.
So,
but in that case, you would think he could be familiar with the code.
Yeah, he should be.
Right, and he should.
You would hope so.
Oh, we can't go this tall because it's not in code.
Yeah. So speaking of that, I'm glad that, you know, that got brought up again. So Austin, I think we need some insight into that before we have that in planning commission. And obviously, Ted has gone through the city and targeted sheds right now. You know, that must be his thing that he's looking at right now, if he's gone through and found a bunch of these and sent out notices on them.
He received a complaint. So he operates on a complaint basis. And so if someone complains about a new structure going up again next to them, he'll go and investigate.
Very good. That's good to know too. So maybe we could have some reading material shown to us, for the example, like what Marla has said. Okay, when somebody builds a house, this is what they have on their plans. What about when somebody buys a house? You know, how do people know that they are supposed to call the city for building permits? Is that just like a common knowledge type thing? Is it something that should be published more? Or, you know, in the spring, when the mayor sends out his messages, reminders that if you're putting up fences and sheds, to contact the city for building permits and make sure, you know what I mean? I don't know, just as far as things like that go, kind of be brainstorming on why are people doing this? is it a lack of knowledge? Is it intentional? You know, Ed, you look like you want to say something.
Yeah. I'm sorry, I was on mute. I've been
problem.
looking as we've been discussing this. I've just been going to one of, kind of one of our big box hardware stores to see what they had in wood sheds. And other than the very largest of sheds, and they're pretty large in here, most of them are below 10 feet on the peak.
Good to see.
Right? It's not unusual to find a lot of sheds that would fit into, into a residential area that are, 10 feet in height.
Yeah.
Not an unusual.
Well, that would be some good research to have, is what sheds are available, and maybe like the tough shed, the shed specialist companies, kind of what they have out there.
I believe when they wrote the ordinance, and I think Ted might have been the one who actually wrote the ordinance back in the day, but when they wrote it, it was, they had tough sheds in mind. So, if they're just thinking, if you're going to go to Home Depot and just buy one of these sheds and put it in your backyard, they took that into consideration when they wrote
it. I mean, here's like an 8x12, wood storage shed, which is kind of what you would look at in terms of a backyard, and it's 110 inches assembled height. So it's 10 inches below.
Yeah.
I believe the ones that we saw tonight, they're a little more custom.
Yes.
Just a kit that someone's putting together.
Right.
Yeah.
But
that would absolutely be
a building permit.
Building permit that falls under, I want this accessory building. Also, to put it that close to your fence, there's 5 other criteria too. Did they meet that?
They said they met all of them. And Austin, I guess you've been speaking with them.
Well, Ted has, but I've been involved in the process. Yeah. Okay. And I think height is really the biggest thing. If they, like one of them said, we looked at chopping off our roof a little bit, So if they did that, they would be in compliance. So
yeah, they might have to make a barn-shaped roof.
I have a question. Are there any consequences, I guess is the word, for not getting a permit when you were supposed to, a building permit?
Well, you could be fined $50 a day until you move it, which is what Ted's doing.
So until they become compliant, they're given a date to come into compliance. And if they're fined $50 a day from that date on until they're compliant. But Sylvia's saying, because they built the building without a building permit, is there like a $200 fine that you built something without your building permit?
I would like it to be at least 1,000, but no one's listening to me.
It's just a daily fine. We've actually talked to, so our previous city attorney, we brought this up with David Church. We actually can't go above like a certain dollar amount.
Oh, that's right. I remember we talked about it.
We wanted to be able to slap them with a larger amount.
Yeah.
He said, nope, sorry guys, you can't do that.
Yeah, it was considered unreasonable or something.
That. So that's really not an option, but we did come up with the daily fine schedule, which is.
And that was the alternate.
Yeah, and it does add up over time. I mean, you're paying $50 a day and 2 weeks go by, it starts to add up.
Yeah, for sure.
So yeah, we do have that. And if they don't resolve it, we can send it to district court where our prosecuting attorney, may challenge them, tell them that they have to remove it, so that there are other ramifications that will happen as well.
Yeah. Okay. Well, these are, I think these are good things to discuss. And I think they're things that affect actually a lot of people in our city. Sheds are a common, in fact, thinking about doing one myself. And I keep telling my husband, you can't just go build that there. You got to go find out what your setback is. He's like, oh. Like,
maybe he just really wants to meet Ted.
Maybe that's what it is. I'll ask him about that. I said, have you heard of this guy named Ted? All right. Anything else in communication? Oh, I did have one thing. Don't we have to, I was reading through the Planning Commission rules and everything, and it said on odd years we need to elect the Planning Commission chair. And so where I had just taken over, is my term done and we need to do that again?
Yes. Yeah. So great point. Ed actually noticed that before the meeting tonight.
Okay. So maybe next meeting.
We were too late to catch it, to put it on the agenda, but yes, technically we should have looked at that tonight.
Okay.
And elected a chair so
Okay.
every odd year, that's something that should be done.
Okay.
And, which got me kind of looking at, I went and looked at the terms, and I noticed that your term is actually up at the end of this month, Jane. So, I don't know. Talk to the mayor,
Okay.
see if you want to get reappointed. I don't know, but yeah. So.
All right. We'll look at that. Yeah.
So,
if anybody wants to take a stab at being chair, next time is your chance. So, okay, that sounds good. Anything else then?
And then I do have a couple more communications. So let's.
Okay.
We talked about the chair position. So the city council has recently decided to start their meetings at 6 p.m. They felt like an earlier start time would be beneficial, and they could get done at an earlier time. And so that's what they're doing. Part of the reason they're doing it is so that they can have a work session before the meeting and kind of talk out some of the issues. I don't know if that's something that the planning commission wants to consider, an earlier start time, if that even works for your schedules. I don't know, but I thought I'd bring it up for everyone to discuss tonight. And then other item that I have is that right now it looks like we don't have a ton of stuff. We haven't had anything submitted. The holidays were really slow, and we don't really didn't receive anything for the upcoming meeting. So I don't know if we're going to have a lot for our second meeting in January. So we're just going to kind of play that by ear.
Sure, it's great. Well, we already just did 3 items just now tonight that we've given you to put on it. So
that's true. That's true.
So short and sweet is great with me. Who would prefer to meet at 6 p.m. and who would prefer to stay at 7?
I think 6 would be okay as long as we set a stop time. Not turn it into a 4-hour meeting or something. You know what I mean?
Exactly. Yeah. Good point, Ethan.
7 is better for my work schedule.
Okay, Ed.
I'm retired. I can do 6 or 7, no problem.
Oh, stop rubbing it in. John.
I like 7 better, but I can go either way.
Okay, Sylvia.
I'm with John. I like 7 better, but I could come at 6 if needed.
Okay. Well, it sounds like 7. Let's stick to 7 for now. And our meetings tend to be shorter. I think the city council meetings often they're there till 11 p.m. sometimes and more in need of work sessions. So that makes sense. But let's keep that in mind. If you guys change your mind about that or have while we're working from home, especially, it doesn't matter as much to me. When we're in the office or actually at City Hall, the timing may differ. I know they moved them earlier in the summer so that they still had some evening left and, things like that one time. But it sounds like for now, let's just leave it at 7. What was your other thing, Austin? The time?
No, I think that's everything actually. So yeah, thank you.
Troy, did you have something that you needed to say?
Yeah, I just have a question. So I had somebody approach me that they're building a new home I can't remember the name of the development, but it's just north of the Heritage Hills up there where they're doing all the developing.
Yeah.
And anyway, she just approached me and she was asking about the mailboxes. I guess they have they just installed some community mailboxes in there. And she's like, man, these are going to be like, multi-million-dollar homes. And we all want our mailbox, our individual mailbox. So I just kind of told her to call you, Austin. I don't know if she did or not, but
I don't know. I have a couple of messages on my machine that I haven't listened to yet. So I don't know if that one of those is her, but
I didn't know how to answer her anyway.
That's actually up to the postmaster. That is not up to the city.
Okay.
So the postmaster is the one who has, on all new developments, they're requiring them to be combined like that. And it's strictly for the ease of the mailman to get his job done.
Interesting.
Did they even do that in Three Falls yet?
I think they did, but that's
I think I saw them there. Especially bigger lots and stuff. Interesting.
Yeah, I was gonna say I can't think of any new developments that and I'm thinking outside of Alpine too that
even
mailboxes.
even the Lambert Park Estates have the community mailbox. That's
Oh, do
in
they?
Utah County.
And that's in the county.
Right.
So interesting. Well, there we go. And that's called the Ridge at Alpine, I believe.
Ridge, okay, thank you.
Yeah. So I have one final thing. How do I make the request that the light fixture on Bertha's Court is like super, super bright? You know, have you driven by that? Or are you just laughing at me? You know,
No, I agree with you totally. It's like
the street light, you go around the corner and it's like, whoa.
I think you can see it from space.
Yeah.
Okay, so I am aware of that. I have brought it up to Will. The lights are adjustable and they come from the factory on their highest setting. And every single electrician that we give the lights out to, I tell them to turn it down to setting for 1. And only about 50% of them get it right. So yes, anyways, I am aware of it. I've told Will about it. He actually purposely left it on high during construction of those new homes because he thought it was good for security, but they are going to be turning that down here shortly.
Okay, that's good. Because you come around the corner and it's really right in your eye and startling.
Yeah, I actually, the lights over at Alpine View Estates might have the same problem. Somebody told me about that one the other day too.
Interesting. Okay. Well, thanks, Ed. You made me feel good that it's not just me.
No, it's just not you. I have had people in my neighborhood bring that up in terms
comment. Oh, that's funny. Oh, good. Okay, well, let's go ahead and approve the minutes. Has anybody had changes or comments on the minutes? If we don't have any changes, let's get a motion.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of December 1st, 2020.
Okay, we have a motion by Sylvia.
Second by John.
Second by John. And all in favor, say aye.
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 Any nays out there? No. Okay. Thanks, everybody. Austin, I'll be in touch. Please reach out if you need any more information to get those 3 things ready for next week.
Not to be a stickler, Jane, but I think we need a motion to adjourn.
We do need
Oh, yeah, we never used to do that. Okay, motion, somebody make a motion.
This is Ed. I'll motion to adjourn our meeting.
We seconded? Who seconded it?
I did, Ethan.
Ethan seconded it. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. All right. Thanks, everybody.
Thank you.
See ya. Bye.
Happy New Year.
Bye.